I'm Meredith Blackwell, and
I'm Don Pfister.
And it's the 10th of July, 2022, and we're on the campus of the University of Florida in Gainesville, and actually in the Hilton Hotel on their campus, where we're having the annual Mycological Society meeting.
And we're here with Luis Quijada, and Luis is a fellow at the Farlow Herbarium, and he studies discomycetes.
And he's probably the only mycologist we'll ever know from the Canary Islands until he goes back and...
Probably.
Okay,
So you want to tell us about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, okay. So I'm from the Canary Islands, as you said, and I was there my whole life. I studied there in college. So before go college, I really like biology, like my whole life, but I was more interested in animals, and I never paid attention to plants at all. So before I start college, I decided to do a short course to work in a veterinarian clinic. And I spent 6 months working in the veterinarian clinic, and then I decided I don't want to work with animals anymore. I suffer a lot. I didn't get with the euthanasia. It was too hard for me. So I decided the most similar to be a vet, maybe is go and see biology, how it is. And during the first year, I fall in love with botany. It was amazing. So the good thing when you are studying botany in the Canary Islands during the first year is that every student has to do his own herbarium. So you have to collect 100 vascular plants and 10 fungi, 10 bryophytes, 10 lichens, and 10 algae. And you go to these seminars that are every week with the professors, and you try to identify. So they identify for you, and once that you go to several, you also can help other students. And during my first seminar, I collect fungi because, of course, first you collect the fungi and everything because you are collecting in autumn, so it's the moment to collect fungi. So I bring fungi to the first seminar, and I show to Esperanza, the professor, a rhizopogon, and I told her, this is a truffle. And she said, how can you say that? That's not a truffle. You cannot say that. You are a biologist now, so if you don't know the name, you shouldn't say anything. And I was like, wow, so impressed. But that was good because I like that people challenge me. So I decided I'm going to impress her. So I decided to go to the field and collect fungi all over during the autumn and bring the fungi and learn the names. So I have really good visual memory. And at that time, also a really great memory to remember names. So after like 5-6 seminars, she was so happy that she told me, you should do a PhD with me in mycology. And I was thinking, what is that? Because I really didn't know. But it was difficult for me when I was going through college and I did the plant biology specialization because I like more cryptogams than vascular plant, but I really love to study also algae. So I was unsure about what to do with my PhD. But at the end, I decided to go with fungi because I was thinking in the opportunities, and how there were nobody in the Canary Island, only Esperanza, her whole life studying fungi and nobody else. So I decided, let's go with fungi and see what happens. So in the last year of college, I collaborate in the department, and she put me in care to curate all the Myxos collection. That was a nightmare. I was like 6 months, like writing in a small card all the name and the data of all the specimens and organizing them and making labels. And after 6 months, I was like, this is gonna be my PhD. So I was not really sure what to do, but she convinced me. She told me, no, your PhD is not going to be like that, so you will see that you are going to like it. And at that moment, she was working in Macaronaceae in general, in the dry habitats in the coast. and she was collecting these orange discos on euphorbia wood. And she was thinking, well, this could be like your first project, you know, start with these tiny discos that we are collecting constantly and nobody knows what they are.
Let me ask one thing. You said discomycete and Micronesia. So was she associated with Richard Karp?
Yeah. Yeah, she met Richard Korf. So
She helped him.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and Richard Korf indeed, he published a work about Orbilia, but he wasn't able to identify. Or he only gives like some names and then like SP1, SP2, SP3. So yeah, and that was how I started
So the little orange one was what?
Orbilia. Yeah, it's the genus Orbilia. So that was so during the first part of my PhD, I was working in a project with her that it was in the National Park for Teide. So it's the summit of the island, also a dry habitat. And I was also with a project about Orbilias in dry ecosystem near to the coast. The genus is really diverse in both, in the coast and in the summit.
I was telling Don the other day, I can't even find the ascospores of Arbelius.
I know, they're so small. Yeah, no, it's a hard genus. Where the morphology is not easy at all. So the learning curve is really, the slope is really high.
But your PhD was not Orbilia.
No, I start with Orbilia, but I really like ecology. And at that point, I know that do a PhD only in taxonomy, maybe it's not a good idea. So I decided also go to the laurel forest and pine forest, and we have these 4 different type of vegetation. I was thinking, it's gonna be really interesting if I can compare what is growing in each type of vegetation. So I decided to expand. Orbilia was in Leotiomycetes at some point, but then they segregate. But I decided I can compare both, you know, classes and see what happened. So yeah, I was like 4 years going to the 4 different type of vegetation and collecting and trying to identify. And I was very lucky because so Esperanza also know about Baral, which is one of the most important specialists in Leotiomyces and of course in Orbiliomyces. And he was probably the person that teach me how to work the morphology. It was really hard during the first year, learn and answer his question, and it was an incredible experience. At the same time, it was really, really hard because he's so accurate. So it took me time to, you know, have enough level to answer all his questions and to really work well the morphology.
Where were you doing that work with Baral? Where were you? Were you actually studying with him?
No, he was in Germany, so
You were not.
no, I never met him in person. We have been like working together, yeah. Yeah, that's the funny thing. Yeah, we have been working since like more than 10 years, but never meet in person.
Interesting.
But Boral does not travel far.
Yeah. I saw him one time in Utrecht.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in
I have
in the
pictures of
Netherlands.
you. Yeah, you
Yeah.
and well, it was at a zoo or someplace where we were
Yeah.
having a social.
So yeah, so that became at the end. So I learned how to do vital taxonomy, which is something that usually mycologists hate, because mycologists don't want to go to the field and study the collection when they are fresh. They want to dry them and study with calm, you know. Not, but yeah, that was the PhD was. It was difficult in that way that I go to the field every week, collect, and I have to study the collection in like 7 days. But at the same time, it was really good because I learned a lot. And yeah, I did my PhD. Everything goes fine. I got an award. It was the 3rd best PhD in science in the faculty. And after that, I started to look for postdoc. And that was really hard. It took me a long time to find a postdoc. In the meantime, I was working in a botanical garden in a different island, in Fuerteventura Island. and I was there working with seeds. I was like the curator or seed technician. So basically collect seed and curate them. I was there like 8 months, and when I was there, I was writing to everybody around the world, trying to find opportunities. And usually people answer me like, no, I'm not interested, because I'm a morphotaxonomist, so I know more about how to work the morphology than work with molecular techniques. So nobody was really very interested in support me. And then Baral recommended me, you should contact Don Pfister and Rosanne Haley, because Don work in Orbilia also.
And Roseanne was a postdoc, and we
Yeah.
had been doing Orbilia work at that point.
And when you got there, you came right away then?
No, he got a fellowship.
Yeah. So Don answered my email and he told me, yeah, we can try to see if you can get a postdoc. And at that moment, there were a postdoc in Spain that you can present a project to a private foundation that the name is Ramon Areces. And we present together a project, and I got it. That was the way that I come here.
And you must have not been there very long when I first met you.
Well,
Can you
we're
remember?
saying what is it 5 years now?
Yes.
Yeah. I can't remember when it was. It when I was at the Radcliffe that I met Louise?
Well,
I don't think so. Or yeah, it must have been. But anyway, the thing was that when I met you, I was instantly impressed because I had been looking at some of these yeast-like fungi that were associated with insects. And Symbiotephrina, that's a obligate thing that grows with insects.
Yeah.
And here you tell me different. So tell about that paper.
Yeah, that paper was, so I collect several things in these two dry ecosystems, in the coast and in the summit. These black discs on wood, I was unable to identify them. I was thinking maybe it could be Clausenomyces, but I wasn't sure about that. And at the same time, I always in contact with Soto, so he was working the same, and he already had some sequence. He told me, I would like to include you in this project, and so we can get sequence of your collection, and I think we can do a really beautiful publication, because we are finding that this anamorph, the asexual stage, is indeed inside the insects. And then now we know that this thing that we have been calling Tromeropsis is the telomorph. So the fruit bodies that we were calling Tromeropsis is in this the sexual stage of that fungi that was inside the insect. Yeah, and that was amazing.
And you didn't believe it at first,
Well,
did you?
I had just read a paper. No, I had a hard time believing it. I had just read a paper, though, where they speculated that some of the cells got away from the insect and could live on their own and reproduce on their own, and that maybe that this happened, and it gave a better chance for the survival of the fungus. And so I'd seen that, but I had no idea there would be a sexual state, because no one had ever seen one. You know.
Yeah, well, that's the crazy things with Leotiomyces, that we really don't know about ecology. Yeah. Well, now that one is not in Leotiomyces anymore, but I mean, at that point, Tromeropsis was in Leotiomyces.
And the other thing you taught me was how many different fungi have yeast stages. Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that one was a recent project, because I was working in the order Teleporales, and in that manuscript, in the Symbiotraphina, we also mention about Cleistotelebolus and the anamorph that is a yeast-like fungi. So there were a publication that the title was like the first yeast-like fungi in Leotiomyces. And when I read it, I was thinking, well, that's not true, because I already was in this paper and we were speculating about that. So I've been collaborating with a different researcher in Canada that he's really good. He's far way better than me. thinking with in anamorph and asexual stage. So I told him, well, we can try to put together how many yeast-like fungi are in Letomyces. And there are a lot of examples. And the interesting thing, in the order that they placed this new genus that they were calling the first yeast-like fungi, is the order with more examples of yeast-like fungi. Because a lot of them are adapted to cold ecosystem. So it looks like that's the strategy. Yeah. But also in Tympanidaceae, in the family that I was working, doing my first project in the Farlow, there are several examples of genera that have yeast-like fungi.
And are any of these associated with insects? Because people sort of have the feeling that yeast are, made for fungi, are made for insects.
That I know, no,
Not really.
not really.
Yeah. So there must be another reason that yeast are made, not just to associate with insects. Yeah. That's interesting.
So it's
Very
Joey
interesting.
Tanny,
Yeah, it's
Joey Tanny,
Oh,
who
okay, that's your
he had
colleague.
worked with on
Yeah.
the paper on
Yeah.
the yeast.
Yeah. So what are you going to do next? You're going to finish. You have some new fungi. I saw pictures.
Yeah, well, we have so many projects right now. So this is the thing. I started in the Farlow with this project about Tympanidaceae. I don't think I'm going to finish in my life because it's so difficult.
So these unusual fungi you're finding, are you going out and collecting them? Is that where they're coming from, or are they in the collection?
Well, I'm working more now with collection in Dervaria. It's easier because when I come to United States, I was expecting to find Tympanis and Durandiella, this genera in Tympanidaceae, frequently, but no, it's so difficult to find them in the field. Yeah. So at the end, I've been working more in type specimen or collection that are old. And from time to time, people find them, and then I can get sequence. But it's really difficult family. So most of the genera are polyphyletic. For example, Clausenomyces was in Tympanidaceae, and now we know that it's 5 different genera. We have proposed some of them, and this is happening like constantly with we have in Tympanidaceae. So, and Tympanis is really difficult. I really don't know. So they are indeed like a monograph, and after that there were a different 2 authors that published a different concept about the species. I don't believe in any of the concept. I cannot say I really don't, it's so difficult for me because in the first work they use the host because these are plant pathogens, and they use also the morphology of the asci and the spores to decide about the number of species. And the second author,
The first one is
Grove, yeah, and the second author are Pirothinsky and Oulet, I think, and they use like the germination pattern in Tympanis because Tympanis is really special. Inside the asci you have 8 spores that germinate, and they produce a lot of conidia that are surrounded by a membrane. So they use these patterns of germination to decide different species. But I've been studying a lot of collections and types, and I can find a lot of different patterns of germination in one single, yeah. So I'm really not sure. And then with the sequence,
specimen.
yeah, in one specimen, exactly. And with the collection that we have sequenced, we are not really finding that they are host specific. So I'm not sure anymore what will be the good morphological characters, and how many species we are going to have in Tympanis. So it looks like to me like this is going to be like a monograph that I will do in 20 years or something like that.
I worked on a fungus that had a gradual spore maturation, and it just got described many times as different genera and lots of different species because the spores, it was hard to tell when they're mature. Yeah. And if you keep them a really long time, they turn dark, but earlier they don't. And they're different sizes. And so as they mature, they change a lot.
Yeah, we always discuss about that. what is over mature, what is mature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell.
How do you
sometimes.
judge, and where do you?
Yeah,
is
it's
there a
easy with
cutoff?
something that shoots its spores off. 'Cause
Yeah. Yeah, and we've done work in southern South America, in Patagonia, Tierra del Fuego. He's got a lot of material from
okay.
that.
Now, the one you had with the membrane, where did that come from? The conidia and the ascospores?
I really don't know. There are no any word.
You mean
It's collection.
geographically?
Yeah.
Oh,
They're north tempered.
Oh.
so Tympanidaceae? Yeah, most of the collection are in the North
You
Hemisphere.
made it, or it was from the collection?
From the different people that have been finding and publishing the species.
Okay, recent though.
Recent, mostly from North Hemisphere. So far, only Clausenomyces have been reported in the south, and Tympani is one species. Yeah. But yeah, well, indeed, when we go to Chile, the idea also was like try to find this species like Tympanis antarctica and the species of Clausenomyces that is from there. We didn't find them, but we found so many Leotomyces, and it was amazing because we were during like 12 days in one place, and we go maybe to 5 different localities, but the distance, yeah, not many, but the distance between the localities was like maybe like 2 kilometers, but the composition of fungi was so different. Yeah, a lot of collection, a lot of species, and different species. We were constantly in the same ecosystem. It was an autophagous forest, so we are not really sure what is going on there, but
Very interesting place.
Well, also another thing about this, about your background, you started out not to study fungi or even botany. I think Don's the only one I know who actually started out to study botany, right?
Me?
Yeah. Didn't
Well,
you start
yeah,
out?
sure. As an undergraduate,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that was my major.
I had like lots of history, English, and eventually I went deep sea fishing. So then I wanted to stay near
Yeah.
the beach, and so I studied fish. And then just by accident, lucky accident, I had to find a job,
Yeah.
and that's when I.
Well, you know,
started working on fungi.
all of you like animals. I like animals, okay, but I don't like blood. And so it was an easy choice. If you wanted to do biology, you'd do botany because you were
Yeah.
able to deal with plants and not messy animals.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I would never thought I would. Well, I would never thought I would be a botany major. Which, to be a mycologist today, you're not really a botany major.
No, well, we talk about botany, but it really is a very broad term that doesn't apply much to what we all do,
No,
other than the best people working on fungi and thinking about the interactions and so forth know enough about the vascular plants to be able to identify them,
Yeah, so maybe
and
it's helpful.
that's important.
Yeah, and I guess historically, a lot of medical doctors also practice botany.
Yeah, well, that was the way in the old days. Yeah,
Because I think of the metabolites that might be medicinal.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but now we're going to be on our own. We don't have to be a part of zoo or botany. You know? And we hope to interview someone later who's going to talk more about this, about how fungi have come on their own now.
Yeah. So, any last thoughts here? Things you want to say
me?
to your colleagues back in Spain?
Oh, they know everything.
I have one more
No,
question.
okay.
Does your family know what you're doing? Do they understand?
Well, not really. So, well, part of them, my sister always like support me, even if she doesn't understand. She was always thinking, when I was doing my PhD, you are gonna do great things. You have to keep doing this. And I was really lucky because my father, he loves to go to the field. So he go with me to all my samplings during my PhD. He was the person that helped me and go, he was the one that was looking for the branches and bring it to me. And that was amazing, So I shared my whole PhD with my father in the field. And in that way, he understand because he was with me, and he at some point even identify. So that was kind of funny. But then one of my brothers, he was always like complaining, "You are not going to have a future in this. You need a stability." Because when I was in that period of time, like 1 year and a half, that after my PhD, that I wasn't able to get a postdoc, he was like, "Yeah, you should try to find a different job, because I don't think this is going to anywhere." But when I got the postdoc, he changed. And now all of them are really happy. So they know. My mother always asks me, "What are you posting in Instagram?" When I post the publication, I try to explain them. I don't think they understand, but they really like it.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm sure they're proud.
Yeah, no, they are.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you to you both.